All right, let's dive deep into the world of J. Robert Oppenheimer. This guy, he's fascinating. Father of the atomic bomb. Yeah, but there's so much
Oh,
more.
absolutely. So many layers to this guy. We're going to look at his whole life, from his crazy student days, like trying to poison his tutor. Can you believe that?
Seriously, what was up with that? But then he ends up leading this huge project, the Manhattan Project, changing history forever.
And we'll be using this awesome YouTube video as our guide. J. Robert Oppenheimer, now I am, become death, the destroyer of worlds. It really digs into his story, the science, the impact.
Yeah, that video is a wild ride. It talks about how Oppenheimer was actually unhappy at Cambridge.
Well, yeah, Cambridge at the time was all about experimental physics, and Oppenheimer, he was a theory guy, right? He loved the ideas, the math, all that.
So it makes sense that he did so well in Göttingen.
Exactly. Göttingen was like the theoretical physics mecca back then. He studied with Max Born, worked with guys like Heisenberg, Dirac.
Wow, so he was surrounded by geniuses.
Oh, yeah. It was an incredible time for physics. Quantum mechanics was blowing everyone's mind.
And Oppenheimer was right there in the thick of it.
Publishing papers like crazy, building on the work of those giants.
It's funny, back then, nobody took nuclear energy seriously.
I know, right? Even Rutherford and Einstein, they called it moonshine.
Moonshine. Seriously.
Yep, they thought it was a joke.
So how do we go from moonshine to the atomic bomb?
Well, scientists were already trying to split atoms, but they were using protons, and it was a nightmare.
What, like, it didn't work?
It worked, but it was super inefficient. You needed crazy high voltages just to get a few protons to hit the nucleus.
Oh, I see. So what changed?
The neutron. Once they discovered the neutron, everything changed.
The neutron.
It has no charge, so it can slip right into the nucleus. No need for those massive voltages.
Ah, clever.
And that's when Leo Szilard comes along with his brilliant idea, the nuclear chain reaction.
You mean one atom splitting can trigger others to split, creating this huge energy release?
Bingo. Suddenly, the moonshine became very real, very dangerous.
And the video mentions this intense moment, right? Some physicist bursts into Oppenheimer's office with news that the Germans had split the atom.
Luis Alvarez. Yeah, that must have been a gut punch. Suddenly, the atomic bomb wasn't science fiction anymore.
Especially with World War II raging, everyone was scared the Nazis would get the bomb first.
Exactly. That fear led to the Manhattan Project.
And Oppenheimer became the scientific leader.
General Groves, the military guy in charge, picked him.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, right? Oppenheimer, he didn't have much leadership experience.
True, and his political leanings were a concern too. But Groves saw something special in him. That brilliance, that charisma.
Yeah, the video talks about how Oppenheimer could discuss almost any scientific topic.
Except sports, apparently.
Oh yeah, he couldn't talk sports to save his life.
But he could explain complex physics concepts like nobody's business, and he could inspire people.
So Groves made the right call then.
Oh, definitely. Oppenheimer was crucial to the success of the Manhattan Project.
In Los Alamos, where they built the bomb. That was Oppenheimer's choice, right?
Well, yeah, he loved New Mexico. He had this vision of combining physics with the beauty of the desert.
It's kind of poetic, in a way.
It is, but he definitely underestimated the scale of the project.
Didn't he think he'd only need a handful of scientists?
6, I think he said.
6?
Yeah, and it ended up involving over 600,000 people.
That's insane.
The logistics, the coordination, the secrecy, it's mind-boggling.
All right, so how did they actually build this thing, this atomic bomb?
It all comes down to fission, chain reactions, and critical mass.
Okay, break that down for me.
Fission is splitting an atom, releasing energy. A chain reaction is when that splitting triggers more splitting, leading to a massive energy release.
And critical mass.
That's the amount of material you need for a sustained chain reaction. Too little, and it fizzles out. Too much, and boom.
So it's all about control.
Exactly, controlling the number of neutrons hitting the atoms. You can actually compare it to a pandemic.
A pandemic, how so?
Think of the multiplication factor, or K. It describes how fast something spreads, whether it's a virus or a chain reaction.
Okay, I'm following.
In a bomb, you want a high K, an uncontrolled explosion.
Like a highly contagious virus spreading quickly.
Exactly.
So the first bomb they designed was the gun type, using uranium-235, right?
Yep. But it had its limitations. Plus, they needed sperm whale oil for lubrication.
Sperm whale oil. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, apparently it was the best lubricant for the job.
You learn something new every day.
And then they discovered plutonium-239, a more efficient fuel,
But they needed a different design for that, right?
the implosion bomb.
Implosion, how does that work?
They used conventional explosives to compress the plutonium.
To increase its density.
Exactly.
Mm.
When you squeeze something, it gets denser. And a denser material can achieve critical mass with less material.
Wow, that's clever but scary at the same time. And that led to the Trinity test, right?
Yeah, the first atomic bomb detonation.
I can only imagine the pressure on Oppenheimer and his team.
The weight of the world on their shoulders.
And the fear of the unknown.
The video mentions that some people were worried the bomb might ignite the atmosphere.
Turning Earth into a giant fireball?
Yeah, that was a terrifying thought.
But they went ahead with the test anyway.
On July 16th, 1945, at 5:29 a.m., the world changed forever.
The blinding light, the shock wave, the mushroom cloud.
They had done it. They had created the atomic bomb, and the desert sand melted into this glassy substance called trinitite.
Trinitite.
Yeah, a permanent reminder of what they had unleashed, and what they had unleashed was a new era, the atomic age.
An age of both promise and peril. An age that continues to shape our world today.
Absolutely. They created this incredible thing, a scientific marvel, really.
Yeah.
But it also meant a whole new kind of warfare, a level of destruction never seen before.
It's hard to even grasp the scale of what happened after Trinity. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Over 200,000 people dead, most of them civilians.
It's a tragedy, no other way to put it. And the video really shows how Oppenheimer grappled with that, with the human cost of his creation.
Yeah, that quote from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It's haunting.
It really gets to the heart of his struggle, this brilliant scientist who helped end a world war, but also unleashed this terrible power.
A burden he carried for the rest of his life. But his story doesn't end there, does it? The video talks about how he became this national figure.
Oh yeah, he was on the cover of Time magazine. And he had a big role in shaping nuclear policy.
So he went from building the bomb to trying to control it.
Exactly. He understood the power of what he had created, and he felt a responsibility to make sure it was used wisely.
Or not used at all, hopefully.
Right. The source material mentions his work on arms control.
Did he always feel that way, even right after the war?
Well, it's complicated. Right after the war, there was this sense of victory. They had built this weapon that helped defeat the Nazis.
But then the Cold War started.
And the Soviets developed their own bomb in 1949.
That must have been a shock to the U.S.
It was a wake-up call for sure, and it kicked off this terrifying arms race.
The U.S. wanted to stay ahead.
Yeah, and that meant developing even more powerful weapons, like the hydrogen bomb.
The super, they called it.
And Oppenheimer, he was totally against it.
Why? Was he a pacifist?
Not exactly. He knew the atomic bomb was destructive, but the hydrogen bomb, that was on another level entirely.
It could have destroyed everything.
He believed it would make the world even more dangerous, increase the chances of a nuclear war that could wipe out civilization.
But they didn't listen to him, did they?
No, the Truman administration went ahead with it. They tested the first hydrogen bomb in 1952.
Ivy Mike.
Yeah, over 400 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb.
It's hard to even imagine that kind of power.
It's terrifying, and of course the Soviets followed suit. They tested the Tsar Bomba in 1961.
The biggest nuke ever detonated.
Oppenheimer's worst fears were coming true.
The world was on a path to self-destruction. Did his opposition to the hydrogen bomb get him in trouble?
It definitely played a role. His past political affiliations, his outspokenness on nuclear weapons. It all made him a target during the McCarthy era.
That was a time of paranoia and fear, right?
Exactly. And Oppenheimer ended up under suspicion. They put him under surveillance, tapped his phones.
Seriously.
And in 1953, they revoked his security clearance.
The father of the atomic bomb, accused of being a security risk.
It's a strange twist of fate, isn't it?
From hero to villain.
He fought to clear his name, but the damage was done.
It's like he became a victim of the very fears he helped create.
Yeah, the atomic bomb brought victory, but it also brought fear and paranoia.
And it destroyed Oppenheimer's career. The video also mentions that he hated a play about his life.
Oh, yeah, the one from 1964. He couldn't stand how it portrayed him.
What did it say?
It showed him as this guy who suddenly realized the evil of what he'd done, like a light bulb going off.
And Oppenheimer didn't see it that way.
Not at all. He felt it was a gross oversimplification. He believed he made those choices out of a sense of duty. To end the war, to potentially save lives?
A tragic necessity.
Exactly. He saw it as a terrible choice, but one that had to be made.
And later, he became a strong advocate for disarmament, right?
Yeah, he believed in international cooperation, in finding a way to manage this new power, this nuclear threat.
to prevent it from destroying us all.
That's right. He understood the stakes better than anyone.
Oppenheimer's story is a powerful reminder, isn't it, about the consequences of scientific progress, about the burden of knowledge.
Absolutely. It's a story that forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our own capacity for both creation and destruction.
He was a brilliant guy, but man, what a story. Almost Shakespearean.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But even with all the controversy, Oppenheimer always believed in dialogue, especially when it came to nuclear weapons.
Like trying to find common ground, prevent another arms race.
The source material actually mentions a moment where he's asked about talking to the Soviets, about halting nuclear proliferation.
What did he say?
It should have been done the day after Trinity.
Wow, like right away, no hesitation.
He knew the urgency of the situation.
It makes you think, what if they had talked back then?
Maybe things would have been different.
Maybe we could have avoided the Cold War, all that tension.
It's a question that'll always linger.
Sadly, Oppenheimer didn't live to see much of that play out. He died pretty young, right?
Yeah, throat cancer in 1965. He was only 62.
What a loss. But his legacy lives on, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. His story makes us think about the big questions. The role of science, the responsibility of knowledge.
What can we learn from all this? From Oppenheimer's life, the atomic bomb?
I think it's a warning, a cautionary tale. Progress without ethics can lead to disaster.
We have to ask ourselves those tough questions. How do we use knowledge responsibly? How do we make sure our inventions don't destroy us?
It's not just about nuclear weapons anymore. We have AI, biotechnology, all these powerful new technologies.
Oppenheimer's story reminds us to think ahead.
To consider the consequences before it's too late.
It's about making the right choices, both as individuals and as a society.
We have to be proactive, not reactive.
We need open discussions involving everyone, not just scientists.
Scientists, policymakers, ethicists, the
Yeah.
public, we all have a stake in this.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Oppenheimer's world, I hope you're walking away with some new insights.
And maybe even a sense of responsibility.
We face different challenges today, but the fundamental questions remain the same. How do we use knowledge for good? How do we create a better future, a more peaceful world?
It's a challenge worth taking on, for all our sakes.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's keep these conversations going. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.